Hi there, welcome to Create with Copper. In this video I want to cover the basics of polishing and finishing your jewellery. It's a huge subject, but briefly I want to cover polishing methods, safety, polishing steps, compounds and buffs. Then I want to show some polishing in action and then talk a little about finishing and protecting your copper jewellery. Now there are 4 basic methods and tools you can use for polishing jewellery. You can polish by hand, and this is how I first started. It can yield satisfactory results, but requires time and effort. If you're only polishing occasionally, this is a good option, although I personally never managed a high shine by hand. You can use a pendant motor or rotary tool. This will substantially reduce the time and effort required, as the motor is now doing the work for you. You do need to hold the jewellery piece one-handed, but this method allows you the flexibility to polish in small spaces, which is ideal for polishing inside rings. The other benefit of a pendant motor is that it is controlled by foot pedal, so you have control and can vary the speed during polishing. There's also the polishing motor. In essence, this is a bigger version of the pendant motor. It's bench mounted, so both hands are free to hold the jewellery. And finally, there's a barrel polisher. This works in a completely different way. Your jewellery is placed in the barrel along with steel shot and liquid, then you can seal it up and leave it to rotate. It's particularly good for chains where rotary polishing is not safe. All will smooth and shine your piece and also work harden it. The barrel has more of a burnishing action, but the others polish by removing tiny amounts of material from the surface of your piece. I mostly use the pendant motor, so a lot of this video will be focused on that. Now I just want to highlight the importance of safety. Particularly when using the rotary tools, you'll be creating a reasonable amount of debris and dust. So eye protection and lung protection are essential. So make sure you've got your safety glasses and a dust mask on before you start. Also, tie up any long hair and don't wear any loose clothes or anything that could get tangled up. Now you might also want to protect your fingers, and you can get tape like this, which is a special tape that sticks to itself but won't stick to your fingers, so you don't end up with any sticky residue. You can also get finger cards, also sometimes called finger cots. Now this is because full gloves are a potential hazard. If they get caught in the tool, they could cut into your fingers, cut off your circulation, or worse. In the same vein, I'll mention again, don't polish chain on a rotary tool. I know we have a lot of fingers, but I prefer to keep them all. Polishing is often split into 3 steps. The first step is deburring or rough cut, where the sharp edges, burrs and scratches are removed. You then move on to polishing, where any marks from the deburring are moved and the general surface finish is improved. And the final step is buffing, where the metal is brought to a smooth, bright, high shine finish. As you move through the steps, you're using ever finer abrasives. Now you might want to split these steps down further and have, say, 2 polishing steps before the final buff, but 3 is a good number to keep in mind when deciding what compounds and buffs to try. If polishing by hand, there are a number of polishing papers or pads that you can try. I got these ones a while ago in a pack of 3 different grits, 800, 1000 and 1500, and I just cut off sections of them to use. You can also use polishing compounds like this rouge on a soft lint-free cloth. And you can get an abrasive thread to get into the tightest spaces. For the pendant motor and polishing motor, there are an enormous variety of compounds, buffs and other attachments. Let's start by thinking about the traditional compound on a buff. Compounds are traditionally composed of an abrasive and a fat, which are solid at room temperature, but will soften with heat caused by friction as you polish. Common compounds to take through the polishing steps are bobbing compound, tripoli and rouge that I've got here. You can also get water-soluble compounds which work in the same way but allow easy washing with water. This Luxie is one such compound and it's available in a range of grits. For the buffs, you can get felt, calico, muslin or wool. And there are also nylon brushes if you have a highly textured piece or perhaps wirework to polish. Generally, I'd look to have the softer buffs for the finer compounds as you go through the polishing steps, but the exact combination is really just a personal preference. Using compounds is fine, but I find them a bit messy. Look at the variety of other attachments where the abrasive is held within the wheel point, etc. My particular favourite is the silicone or rubber wheels and points. And I've also heard great things about the 3M discs, where you layer up 3 or more onto a mandrel and they'll polish up textured pieces really well. The only thing to be careful of is that you have them on the mandrel in the right direction. Now, I've mentioned grit sizes a few times, and I was hoping to find a table somewhere that I could direct you to that told you which grit size to get for what job or step of polishing. I haven't yet found one online, but the nearest I found was in the little guide I got with my Fordham accessories kit. I can't find it online anywhere, so I'm just going to reproduce it here. It actually relates to the 3M discs, which is why particular numbers are used, but I hope it gives a bit of a guide to the grit sizes that you might want. The finish you achieve will depend on the metal, the abrasive, the buff, the speed of the motor, and even the amount of pressure you apply. So the best advice is to try a variety of compounds, buffs and attachments and see what works best for you. Now, the first example I want to use are the air-chased earrings I did a tutorial on a couple of weeks ago. So these pieces have been cleaned in pickle, and you can see at the moment they've got a dull finish on them. And for the first stage of polishing, the deburring stage, I need to make sure all the edges are smooth and rounded. So I'm just going to use a file and carefully work my way around the pieces. And once that's done, I'm going to move on to the second stage of polishing, and I'm using one of the silicone wheels here. I've got a few scratches from the hammer marks, so I'm just going to move the wheel gently over those until they're removed. And then I'll carry on with this polishing stage across the rest of the piece. And I'm just trying to keep fairly sort of long movements, drawing the wheel towards me and just reaching the areas that I can with this wheel. Now, I polish before patina, so I can get the finish that I want on the whole of the texture. And then once I've used the liver of sulphur, I can just remove the patina on the areas that I want to get the effect that I desire. If I then want a higher shine, I'll just polish the higher parts of the piece, usually by hand. Now, that's done all that I can with the silicone wheel, but there's still some areas that I just can't get into because the radius is too large. So I'm going to switch to one of the silicone points that I've got. And I'm just going to use that to get into the dips that the wheel couldn't reach and polish up. And then we're ready to move to the final polishing stage, the buffing. Now, for this piece I'm using a felt wheel and some of the rouge, and the first thing you need to do is load up the wheel with some of the rouge. Now, for this you're better off running the motor at a higher speed, but you need to be careful and try not to pick up too much of the rouge. I've possibly got a little bit too much on here. And then, as before, you're just moving the wheel gently over the surface towards you. And just work your way along the piece. And just get the piece to the polish that you want. Now, you might find if you've used too much rouge, you've got some black areas on there. They'll usually just wipe off, or you can use a bit of washing up liquid to wash them off. And the other example I want to show is the Y11 Ring. Now, I generally don't tend to polish wire work, as I haven't done anything with the wires to dull them or to mar the finish in any way. But if I did need to, I'd be using the nylon brushes or these 3M discs. And I'm just going to run the discs over the piece very gently, just make sure they don't catch anywhere, but they polish the piece up. Now, some of the abrasives are said to be okay with stones and won't mark them, but just to be safe, you can either mask the stone off whilst you're polishing, or just use your thumbnail over the top to keep the wheel away from it. Now, one of the properties of copper is that it reacts readily with the atmosphere. Left in its bare form, it will darken over time, and when worn next to the skin, bare copper can make your skin turn green. If you want to leave the copper bare, these issues can be minimised by cleaning the jewellery regularly and storing it in protective bags. But personally, I prefer to seal my jewellery using Renaissance wax. I have a blog post that goes into more detail about preventing the green skin issue, but I just wanted to show you how I apply the Renaissance wax. So going back to the air chased earrings, the pieces have now been patinaed, and I'm just going to take a soft lint-free cloth, this is a microfiber cloth, and pick up the tiniest amount of Renaissance wax, and then just gently spread that over the piece. You won't see where it is, you can kind of feel it. But just make sure you've covered everywhere. Then take another section of the cloth and buff the metal. Now, I'm not sure how widely available Renaissance wax is, but it's a microcrystalline wax, if that helps you to source an alternative if you can't get it by the branded name. You can then do the back in the same way. It does seem like you've put just almost nothing on there, but I promise you it does work. And if you are a bit concerned about if you've covered everything, you can use several coats of the Renaissance wax. Just leave it to dry and set a while in between coats. Now, for wire work, the wax can be a little bit more difficult to apply as you've got more intricate spaces to cover. So I just use toothbrushes. And as before, I just want to pick up a small amount, which can be quite difficult with a brush, so you might just need to spread it along the bristles a bit. And then just gently go around the wire work and just brush the wax in. For a ring like this, make sure you've covered everywhere and you've covered the inside as well. Then I want to take a clean toothbrush just to start buffing that polish. Once you've gone around everywhere with the brush, you can give it a final buff with the cloth. And that's the ring finished and protected. I hope that's helped and given you an idea of the polishing and finishing options that you have. If you like the video, please feel free to give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and head over to my website for more hints, tips and projects. See you soon.